Little guy, little guy. Wired to Fish friends. We are hanging out here, Mark Zona with you. Get over here, boy. Like, I am convinced that bass, as much as this is gonna sound insane, it's just a little chidler, okay? Out here cracking a Strike King coffee tube around. Here's what I'm gonna fill you in on, gang, is we're in a really big lake. It's a great lake. It's Lake Huron. And if you pan out there, that goes for like 1,000 miles, okay? And you say to yourself, on any, and this is not just on Great Lakes. This is really on inland lakes. But for smallmouth, like if you go out there in that lake, there's hundreds and hundreds of miles of rock, like stuff where you're like, my gosh, there should be a smallmouth every single 10 feet. What I've learned on the Great Lakes and inland lakes for populations of smallmouth, gang, find the mixture, okay? The mixture where rock meets sand, where sand meets grass. Wherever you can find, what I've learned is combinations, okay? This bay that we're in right here is sand, grass, little bit of scattered wood, and rock. Just remember that the biggest tip I could give you is those transitions from one cover to another, a smallmouth uses that as highways and stop signs. So if, you know, and the other thing about that, and I don't talk about this a whole lot, how I really find the majority of my smallmouth juice spots, like this little bay that we're in right here, I idle and idle and idle and idle. Your number one weapon, the number one weapon for finding big schools of smallmouth, your eyeballs. Coming at me, coming at me, coming at me. Ow, a little chidler. And one other thing, okay? Ooh, there's another little mamba. There's another little mamba. Another thing about smallmouth, we've got a box. We've got 5 captives in that live well right now. The other thing about a smallmouth, you can have, and just always remember this, man, is you can have the best spot on planet Earth, like the best spot on planet Earth. But if their food source is not there, they're not there. The 2 weeks that a smallmouth spawns is really the only time that a smallmouth is not gorging himself and all of his buddies around him. What I've noticed, Great Lakes, inland stuff, besides the weeks of the spawn, you have got to be around food. Like what's interesting is this certain little bay that we're in, the bait is not in here that good yet. There's a scraggler here, a scraggler there, but I believe from Lake Champlain to Lake Huron here, all the way up to Mille Lacs and stuff like that, if you are not around what they put in their mouth, you are not around them. You know, the one thing I've talked about, it's something I've passed on to my kids. You know, back when I used to fish a pile of tournaments, smallmouth tournaments, look at that, like where do you start, right? Where do you start out there? Is we all have a tendency to want, we get to the lake, it's your day off, you want to put the trolling motor down and you want to cast. The famous smallmouth fisheries that I've been lucky enough to fish, and a lot of you folks that are watching this, you guys get to fish, they're so expansive, it's hard to point, you know, on a map, hey, I'm gonna start here. And one of the things that I passed on to my boys, one of them gets in the driver's seat, one of them stands up here, and all you do is idle. Our lakes are clear enough, especially now with zebra mussels, our lakes are clear enough to where literally the best fishing I have found is just idling and idling and idling and idling, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there they are. I mean, it's, in all honesty, it's as easy as that. But you might be idling for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours until you find the hornet's nest. That is probably the #1 way I find basically 10 to 15 foot of water and less, massive, massive schools of big ones. It's just staring. There he is. I'm gonna spot lock us. Here's what one of the, it's not a big one at all. It's not a big one, but here's one of the things I'm talking about. I don't know if you could see it right there. I talk about sand meets rock, rock meets grass, blah, blah, blah. It's just a little dude. Is, if you look behind the boat, there is a boulder that's as big as our boat, okay? I'll get us right over top of it in a second. But what that is for a smallmouth, and granted, that's not a big one, what that is, that's a palm tree in a desert. Like, there's nothing on this flat right here except that giant boulder. And smallmouth, there he is. Ah! No! Smallmouth become, like when they find something like that right there, like that house, they become really, really territorial. Like, they'll sit on that thing for weeks at a time. And that's one of the things that I've noticed with smallies is, like, there's magic boulders that they'll use year in, year out. And granted, those were 2 small fish right there. But I've also noticed that, especially places, man, like Thousand Islands, Lake Ontario, they'll spawn on boulders and they'll stay on them darn things all the way through summer. Like, let me show you the size of this thing. I have a waypoint on it. That's a boulder I found years and years and years ago. You know, another thing, whether I'm up on a flat like this or I'm fishing, you know, that area where we caught them this morning, is, man, I keep going. The only time I slow down is when I know I'm in an area that's got them. You know, like right here, I'm just burning water with a red-eye shad. But even like my coffee tubes, my drop shots, all of them, I use very heavy weights. 3/8 ounce, ½ ounce, 3/4 ounce. The reason why, smallmouth, a lot of times, they eat your junk when it hits the water. When it hits the water and it sinks. And look, if I got to sit and wait with an 1/8 ounce head or a 3/16 ounce head, at the end of the day, it's a law of average. If I'm throwing a ½ ounce tube compared to a 3/16 ounce tube, I'm going to make 4 times as many casts with a ½ ounce by the end of the day as I would with an 1/8 ounce. Does it make sense? That's the one thing I would tell you is, even when you're finesse fishing, drop shot and stuff like that, for smallmouth, man, until you connect with them, throw some weight. Coming up. Yeah. That's a Great Lakes Mambo right there. Come here. Uh-huh. Hi there. A little Mr. Sassy Pants in. Remember that, a couple things that we went through right here? No joke. Mixes of cover, rock, sand, grass. Make sure you're around their food. I'm talking about good.